The lander touched down softly, its metal hull flattening the delicate wildflowers as it started to deploy its troops. 2,000 Clernians, towering creatures with 4 limbs and dense muscles, all clad in traditional combat gear. They swiftly disembarked from their vessel and lined up in formation for their 14 commanders. This was one of the many rites of challenge sanctioned by the Galactic Accord. The Tremians, a newly discovered species with little to no interstellar presence, had been dismissed by the Accord as primitive savages due to their internal conflicts. Hence, many interstellar powers invoked the right of challenge, a formal duel between 2 rival forces for territorial control. The process was straightforward. 2 static units would engage in combat over a designated territory with a maximum of 10,000 combatants per side. The losing faction would permanently renounce any claim to the territory, but could challenge another at any time. Even their home planet could be contested. Should the defending side lose, they had to vacate the territory immediately. If they refused, the entire Accord would attack them and obliterate their forces. It was a system designed to prevent wholesale genocide and massive wars, saving lives and resources. To be fair to the locals, these rites were conducted on their own territory to give them an advantage. Clernians anticipated an easy victory as they gathered on a small island cluster on the Tremian planet Exceloria VIA, lush world encircled by active volcanoes and thick foliage. This environment was their element, and their superior technology, including plasma pistols and beam cannons, made them confident against the Tremians' primitive pulse rifles and kinetic weapons. Once all troops had disembarked and assembled, checking their equipment, a bright blue flare signaled the start of the rite. The commander began a rousing speech. All present swelled with pride and confidence. They sensed an easy triumph. Their sensors detected no movement or threats nearby. Suddenly, the commander faltered, let out a soft groan, and collapsed lifelessly. A soldier rushed to assist, finding a small entry wound at the base of the commander's skull. Violet blood stained his hands. He shouted that they were under attack, just as his squad captain emitted a wet gasp, spraying blood on the soldier behind him before falling dead. Panic swept through the unit as they dashed for cover, seeking targets but finding none. After a tense silence with no further casualties, one officer cautiously exposed himself to survey the area and was instantly shot through the eye. The unit began to fire wildly into the dense vegetation, losing 6 more men to precise headshots. Despite their helmets, the bullets penetrated effortlessly. As the panic fire ceased, the officers managed to regain control and ordered their men into the trees. They found nothing. No spent ammunition, no tracks, no signs of the enemy. Venturing into the jungle, they encountered an eerie stillness, devoid of even the usual sounds of wildlife. To secure their retreat, a detachment of 50 men guarded the landers. A retreat meant a loss, but could offer valuable lessons. There were 50 landers, all hovering a few feet above the ground, with a guard of 200 men. Suddenly, a distant thud was followed by one lander exploding in a fireball. Several nearby men were either incinerated or thrown by the blast. Moments later, another impact tore an engine off a lander, causing it to spin out of control and collide with 2 more landers. Panic gripped the ground troops as 2 more landers were hit, one crushing a frantic officer attempting to calm his men. Explosions erupted along the mountainside, sending the unit of 200 into chaos as they fired wildly into the trees, only for explosives to tear through their ranks. With transports disabled and a retreat impossible, the mountain unit was soon wiped out. By the time the remaining officers could issue orders, most of the mountain unit lay dead or dying, and only 13 of the 50 landers remained operational. An order to retreat was given, and the surviving landers fled. As they ascended, a barrage of missiles streaked from the surrounding mountains, obliterating each transport. Trapped and facing an unseen foe, the officers deduced that the mountains were heavily fortified with traps. Stranded, the remaining force of 1,300 pressed on, crossing a long bridge to the larger island in the archipelago. Just as they reached the bridge, a coordinated explosion at both ends trapped them in place. The bridge collapsed, condemning them to a death in the churning river below or the explosive blasts above. The officers tried to give orders, but an explosive shell obliterated one, splattering fragments over his men. With the bridge destroyed, all hopes of retreat vanished as more explosions tore through their ranks. Only 4 of their original 14 commanders and 1,300 of the initial 2,000 troops, a contingent of 200 marched south, moving through what appeared to be an industrial or storage area. They charged a camp, encountering a peculiar statue, an approximation of a Clernian holding metal discs. It was a children's toy, sitting atop a box of explosives. When picked up, the toy activated, triggering a series of demolition charges that decimated the troops. Survivors were picked off by unseen snipers. The remaining army of 400 pressed on toward an outpost visible from the air, advancing along a narrow road. Snipers picked off 2 or 3 men every few steps. Sporadic bursts of gunfire from hidden assailants killed several more. Investigations into the jungle yielded no results, with some search parties never returning. As they neared the outpost, constant attrition whittled them down. The lead officer was decapitated by a sniper, and a series of explosions rained down from above. Panicked, the remaining troops fired wildly before being hit by a barrage of unseen explosives. Only one soldier survived, encountering the first Tremian warrior. Emerging from the jungle, the Tremian wore green armor resembling fabric with interwoven plating and a helmet. The Clernian's plasma rifle was spent, leaving him defenseless. The Tremian approached and emptied his magazine into the Clernian before vanishing into the foliage. Elsewhere, a force of 300 met their end against a Tremian armored vehicle. The crude, boxy machine with a multi-barreled gun charged at them, spraying thousands of rounds and flanking their formation. Plasma weapons proved ineffective against its mirrored armor. The battle lasted mere minutes, resulting in a slaughter. Another group of 100, unable to traverse the terrain, returned to find their landing zone a wasteland. Furious, they moved west to the bridge. Their existence was cut short by smoke grenades and a flamethrower-wielding Tremian, evoking ancient nightmares of vengeful deities. Panic-stricken, they either succumbed to bullets or the inferno. Avoiding open areas, the last 300 men moved cautiously, but 100 fell to snipers and traps. The sole surviving officer perished in a pitfall trap, and the remaining troops were systematically eliminated. In the end, only 10 remained, cowering in a field. Driven to madness, one soldier called out their unseen enemy. With only blades left, he believed victory was still possible. The soldiers formed a circle, daring their foes to show themselves. 9 dropped dead from headshots. The last soldier, covered in his comrade's blood, screamed for combat. Suddenly, 24 Tremians emerged from the underbrush, blending perfectly into the environment. A bullet severed the last soldier's leg, and a Tremian finished him off with a pistol shot. The Clernian fleet orbiting the planet recorded the entire battle and fled in terror. As they retreated, they realized the Tremians had deployed a field of limpet mines in their path. Each mine A kiloton nuclear warhead attached itself to the hulls, and a message played over open communications. Pity those who think advanced weaponry and grand fleets make them strong. Tell the galaxy of today's events. We await them, leaving no survivors. The mines detonated, annihilating the fleet. Only a barely functional frigate escaped. The galaxy saw the recording. The Accord forbade future challenges against the Tremians and barred traitors from their space. Fleets that sought vengeance were never heard from again.